got for Nikola Mirotic, even though people will scoff at them for not getting a first round pick. I like the fact that they were able to get two pretty, what should be high second round picks, and Stanley Johnson, who, although obviously he's been a big disappointment in Detroit, he's still a young player who they could potentially see what happens with a change of scenery. I like the move they made acquiring Markieff Morris and getting a second round pick there, again from Washington in 2023. So they essentially got three second round picks from Washington. And I know you brought up the Julius Randle trade. And while, yes, I agree with you that they should have traded him, I guess that they feel that he will be a part of their future. And they now, after making the Mirotic trade and essentially guaranteeing themselves that they're not resigning Mirotic, they will have enough cap space to re-sign Julius Randle for the actual amount that he's worth. So I guess that's their basis for holding on to him. Whether we agree or disagree, I think their goal is to still win next year. Obviously, I think that they should look into trading Drew Holiday this offseason, but I highly doubt they will. Not until he requests a trade out of there by next year's deadline, which I fully think he will do. Their goal is to win, and just for that, holding on to Julius Randle is not the worst move. They get a B plus because of what they got in return for Wesley Johnson and Nikola Mirotic.
Now the New York Knicks, and I believe besides the Kristaps trade that we've discussed in the past, I believe they haven't made any moves, but they've clearly, opened up cap space, which I'm going to give two grades for this. If they're able to sign Kevin Durant and maybe another player, then to me it's an A, the trade that they made. But if they don't, to me it's an F because you give up your best asset to give up cap space, which I don't think it's the smartest thing to do.
Yeah, I'm going to grade this move independent of what happens this summer. I think just the simple fact that Kristaps did not want to be there, getting what they got in return for him, gives them a high grade. Regardless of what happens this summer, he did not want to be there. He wasn't going to be of any help in terms of attracting free agents. So I think by trading him away and getting what they got in return, including 2 second-round picks, including a lot of salary cap space, and Dennis Smith Jr., who I think people are sleeping on in this deal, just for that, they should get a pretty high grade of B+. But because of the fact that they failed to trade anyone else, including Van Lane, Moutier, Dotson, Cantor, Matthews, guys that would not have netted them a lot, but even Frankie Smokes, I think for that I will drop them down to a B- because of the fact that I think they could have gotten a few more second round picks in return for these guys, which some teams value second round picks, some teams don't. I choose to value them when you're able to give away players who are unimportant.
If I can ask, actually, I'm going to totally disagree with you. I don't think people are sleeping on Dennis Smith Jr. I don't think he's that good.
Well, that means you're sleeping on him.
Even if you,
you just don't think he's that good.
I sleep on him.
Okay.
And I think if Kristaps was out there, I do, like I argued earlier, that believe that they could have gotten more in return for him. Oklahoma City Thunder, if I'm recalling correctly, they did not make a trade.
They did not, no.
I like the team. I've never been a Thunder fan, but I like the team they have put together. So I'm gonna, I don't want to give them an A for staying pat, but I'll give them a B for the team they've put together, and I hope for them just to keep playing like they were.
I'll give them a C for staying pat. I think they could have gone out and made an upgrade, made a move by trading away Patterson and Abrinas for a player of maybe perhaps Alec Burke, who ended up getting traded to Sacramento, involved a couple of second-round picks. They didn't. It's okay. I think they'll be fine. But I do feel that they could have made a small move to help improve their roster. So they get a C from me.
All right, now we have the Orlando Magic, who made a trade. They made a trade for Markelle Fultz. In this trade, they gave up Jonathan Simmons. I believe they also gave up the Oklahoma City Thunder protected.
Top 20 protected, yeah. First round pick for next year, conveys to 2 second round picks if.
So, it seems like that pick will convey because Oklahoma City Thunder is one of the better teams in the West. And they've been consistently there.
And essentially what is Cleveland's second round pick this year, which is probably be 31, 32, so a high second round pick.
Yeah, I think, giving up those assets wasn't the smartest thing, but then, Markelle Fultz, he was a number one pick, and he was everyone before he got whatever's going on. I don't even want to speculate, but everyone thought he should be the number one pick. That he was a great prospect. So taking a chance on Markel Fultz, in my opinion, for a team like Orlando, who is bad at drafting no matter what, so those picks would probably turn into garbage players anyway. I'm gonna say taking a chance on Markel Fultz. It's pretty smart. I'm gonna give it a C+.
Yeah, I like that move. I think not trading Vucevic and Terrence Ross was a big mistake. Even if they're able to resign one or both of those players, what's the point? You could acquire value in return for them. What is the point? Makes no sense to me. For that, they will get a D+ out of me just because I do like the fact that they're taking a chance on Markel Fultz. If I were them, instead of trading away the first-round pick, which I read that they had an option to do this, that instead of including the first-round pick, they could have included Terrence Ross in the deal. Would have made much more sense for Philly. Would have made much more sense for Orlando. They didn't do that. I give them a D+ just simply because I do like the fact that they're taking a chance on Markel Fultz, even though there's a small chance that it will work out. I like the risk they're taking there, but they really should have tried to get as much value in return for specifically Vucevic, and to a smaller extent Terrence Ross.
All right, so now we have Philadelphia 76ers, who were pretty busy during the trade deadline. They made one of the, in my opinion, and I heard different theories, and one of the better trades when they traded for Tobias Harris, which they gave up. I think we just mentioned earlier what they gave up. In my opinion, Tobias Harris is a really good player. To me, he's a little bit underrated. I do believe that he, had an argument to be an all-star this year. I think the fit with Philadelphia and Tobias Harris is going to be pretty good. Now, they obviously were able to trade away Markel Fultz, and they, probably got in return more than some people thought they would get. They were able to get a first-round draft pick and Jonathan Simmons, who will help them. I mean, one of their problems was their depth. Now, obviously, Jonathan's not a great player, but having him being able to come off the bench and play some defense and maybe score a little bit, I think it'll be a good fit. I'm going to grade their trade deadline performance. Now, if we're including Jimmy Butler's trade,
we could. Let's do it.
So I would argue that I would really like this Tobias Harris trade if they didn't make the Jimmy Butler trade, because then I would think they would have a lot of depth. I think the team would make more sense. I think the fit with Tobias Harris would be much, much better. But now having Jimmy Butler there, kind of a ball stopper, the fit is a little bit weird. Now, maybe you're hedging that Jimmy Butler is going to leave, but you will at least be able to re-sign Tobias Harris, which, to me, would still be a pretty good team. It wouldn't be the greatest team. But, you're all in on this year. I'm going to give them a B+.
Yeah, I give them an A-, and I don't necessarily disagree with you that actually I do agree with you that probably the Tobias Harris move would have been a lot better had they not also traded for Jimmy Butler, but that was so unforeseen at the time that making the Jimmy Butler trade was almost necessary, and it was unforeseen the fact that Tobias Harris would become available and they would have been able to pull off this type of trade. But yes, and this move accomplishes a few things. It's an insurance policy. If Jimmy Butler is to leave, they have a third star on their team. Not a superstar, but a third star on their team. And because of the fact he'll have a fairly low cap hold, all things considered, relative to how much he probably could make on the open market, his cap hold will be at about $22.2 million. And if Jimmy Butler decides to leave, specifically now that they made the corresponding move of trading Markel Fultz for a player in Jonathan Simmons who is not only on a lower contract for next season, but also on a non-guaranteed contract, meaning that leaves it up to Philadelphia on what they do. And by acquiring the high second-round pick and another first-round pick next year, they save money doing that because now they won't have to pay their first-round. They won't have to pay another first-round pick this year because that Thunder pick is for next year, which I'll touch on that in a second too. But by trading away Markel Fultz and his over $9 million guarantee for next year, if they are unable to re-sign Jimmy Butler, that will leave them about over $30 million, probably closer to $35 million in terms of salary cap space this upcoming summer. And salary cap space is just that. It's salary cap space until someone decides to use it. but at least they'll have that available. If not for a star, then for a couple of bench pieces, probably 2 or 3 bench pieces, solid bench pieces too, which that part will be nice for them. And not to mention, again, acquiring that first-round pick in 2020 after having traded away their own 2020 second-round pick allows them now to use another first-round pick either this summer or next season in a trade, which would not have been the case. They would have only been able to trade away at earliest their own 2022 first-round pick. So at least by acquiring a 2020 first-round pick, they're able to use that again this summer. They're able to trade away their own either 2021 first-round pick or anything in the future. So a lot of very shrewd corresponding moves. Acquiring James Ennis is another move I like because it adds to their depth. A very shrewd move, A- to Philadelphia. Had they been able to trade for Nikola Mirotic, it would have been even nicer. They have such a huge amount of second-round picks even after this deal that they should have offered probably at least a third second-round pick. All of them are actually pretty high, so they would have been potentially been able to pull off that Nikola Mirotic trade, but it didn't happen. So,
okay, so now we have the Phoenix Suns who finally made the trade for, well, kind of a point guard, maybe more of a shooting guard in a point guard's body, Tyler Johnson. Now, they didn't give up much in this deal. They gave up Ryan Anderson, who wasn't doing anything for them. Yeah, I mean, I think it's an okay move. I don't know what Phoenix's goal is. I mean, I think also the goal with Phoenix would also try to, go as low as getting Zion Williamson, because that would be a pretty interesting fit in Phoenix if they can get him. I'm going to give them this deal, I don't know, a C+.
Yeah, I'll go with a B. I mean, a B-. They upgraded in terms of their point guard position. They got younger. Johnson's actually a solid player. He won't be a difference maker. Who knows? Like you said, Phoenix, I don't know if they know what their goal is. But the only reason why I give this a B- and not a higher grade is because now they did take away some of their salary cap space for this summer. And I know I mentioned it before. Salary cap is just salary cap until someone decides to use it. But kind of if you're going to acquire someone and use salary cap space, make it someone worthwhile. I don't know if Tyler Johnson's that player, but kudos to them. They got their point guard who's a better player than Ryan Anderson. Good for them.
All right, Portland Trailblazers. I don't believe they made any trades.
They did, yeah. Well, they picked up Rodney Hood.
Oh, yeah, they did a Rodney Hood
And then
trade.
they also picked up Scala this year for Caleb Swanigan. Yeah, Caleb Swanigan, yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'll give those trades about a C. I don't, the Rodney Hood pickup might end up being kind of helpful. But I thought Portland, they'll be the same team that they have been for the past 2 or 3 years. They didn't make any major changes to their team, so I don't necessarily know that they're in a better place. So I'll leave them at a C.
Yeah, you get a C+ from me. Rodney Hood's an upgrade, not a big upgrade. Kind of like it seemed just like a move they did just to show that they could make a move, that they could make an upgrade, but it doesn't really improve their roster that much. C+ for me.
Okay, so now moving on, we have the Sacramento Kings, who made a deal for Harrison Barnes that we talked about. They obviously made that Scala BCA trade that you just talked about.
They involved themselves in that Rockets Cavs trade we were talking about, essentially exchanging Iman Shumpert for Alec Burks, and I believe they got a second-round pick in this deal.
So I will say Sacramento, they are obviously trying to make it for a playoff spot. They're going to have some cap space, and they know that it's hard for them to get a free agent, so I figured that they probably figured, we'll just add Harrison Barnes, who, Harrison Barnes is not going to be the number one option here. He's probably going to end up being number 2 or number 3 behind Hield and Fox. So, I don't think it's a terrible move for them. I think, some of these players, with Bagley and Fox kind of giving them an experience for a playoff run and maybe make the playoffs can be beneficial for their future. So I'll give this deal about a B.
I'll give it a B+. Like you said, they were actually going to have a ton of cap space. They'll still have a very good amount of cap space, probably about anywhere between 30 and 35 million, even after acquiring Harrison Barnes. Barnes will be on an expiring contract after next season, which is beneficial to them as well. I think he's a solid player who will help him out. He's a little bit above average. That's it. I like the move simply because of the fact that they